So far we deal with the single dimensional array, that is also called one dimensional array. Now we see multidimensional arrays. Multidimensional array is also called as array of arrays. Multidimensional arrays are not limited to two indices. Multidimensional arrays can have 2, 3, 4 or more dimensions. The amount of memory needed for an array rapidly increases with each dimensions. An array in which data are arranged in the form of array of arrays is called multidimensional array. An array can have as many dimensions as required. However, two-dimensional and three-dimensional arrays are commonly used. The syntax of multidimensional array is as data type. It indicates the data type of the array, then the name of the array, and then the number of dimensions. So far we see only one dimension, so we use single brackets. If we use two dimensional, then we use two brackets, two set of brackets, and if we use more than two dimensions, then we use as much pair of brackets as we needed. So in this example, array name is an array of type data array of type data type, and it has n dimensions. The number of elements in a multi-dimensional array is equal to the product of size of all dimensions. So total number of elements in uh, above array is calculated as d1 multiplied by d2 multiplied by d3 up to multiplied by dn, where where d1 d2 and dn are constant expression indicating the length of different dimensions of the array. Array with two dimensions often represent tables of values consisting of information arranging in rows and columns. By convention, the first identifies the elements in the row and the second identifies the elements in the columns. Arrays that require two subscripts to identify a particular element are called two-dimensional arrays or 2D arrays. Arrays with two or more dimensions are known as multidimensional arrays. So as a summary, two-dimensional arrays can be considered as a table that consists of rows and columns. Each element in 2D array is referred with the help of two indices. One index is used to indicate the row, and the second index indicates the column of element. When we are working with two-dimensional array, we require to refer two subscript operators which indicates row and column size. The main memory of two-dimensional array is rows, and sub-memory is columns. One two-dimensional array, when we are referring one subscript operator, then it gives rows address, and second subscript operator will gives elements. So in short, a two-dimensional array, in two-dimensional array, the first index indicates an array containing rows, and the second index indicates the number of columns carrying by the array. Syntax of a two-dimensional array is as First data type of array, then array name, and then we use two brackets, one for rows and one for columns. For example, int x 3 and 4. Here int is the data type of the array, x is the name of the array, and in 3 into the brackets indicates the number of rows and 4 indicates the number of columns. Here x is two-dimensional array. This array can hold 12 elements, as we see in the left side that this array creates a table. This table has 3 rows and 4 columns, and the position of first element in this table is x00, uh, means first row and first column. Second element x01, third one is x02, and fourth one x03. Similarly, for row in second row, first element is x10, second one is x11, third one is x12, fourth one is x1 and 3. In the third row, first element is x20, second element is x21, third element is x22, and fourth element is x23. So this statement declares a two-dimensional array. The first index indicates array contains 3 rows. The index of first row is 0 and the index of the last row is 3. The second index indicates that each row in the array contains 4 columns. The index of first column is 0 and the index of fourth column is 3. The total number of elements can be determined by multiplying number of rows and columns. It means that the above array contains 12 elements. Accessing the individual elements of a 2D array, the array name and indexes of row and column are used to access an individual element of 2D array. For example, the following statement A1 and 2. Here, if we want to access the third element of second row, then we write it as A1 and 2. Here 1 indicates the second row and 2 indicates the third column. Similarly, 00, A00 indicates that value stored in first column of first row. A01 indicates that value stored in second column of first row. Similarly, A02 indicates that value stored in third column of first row, and similarly A10 indicates that value stored in first column of second row. A11 indicates that value stored in second column of second row. Similarly, A12 indicates that value stored in third column of second row. So the nested loops are frequently used to enter data in two-dimensional array. The outer loop are normally used to refer to the rows in array. Similarly, the inner loop are normally used to refer to the column of rows. So here is some summary points. Number of subscripts variable. required for two-dimensional array is 2, and to declare a two-dimensional array we write array name and the number of rows and columns. So for example, here we declare x3 and 4. 3 is the number of rows and 4 is the number of columns, and total elements in this array is 12, also called number of cells. So number of for loops required to access the data in this array or to write the data in this array are, are two loops, are also called nested loops. Here is a summary of the two-dimensional array, that is x, 3 and 4. Here A00, 0th row and 0th column, A01, 0th row and first column, similarly A23, second row and third column. Each element is accessed by its index value in the table. Important points related to array always size of the array must be an unsigned integer value which is greater than 0 only. In declaration of the array size must be required to mention. If size is not mentioned, then compiler will give an error. For example, int array, and if we did not give the size of rows and columns, then compiler gives us or indicates a warning. Here is some examples how to declare 2D arrays. First one is declare an integer array with 100 elements. We write int a 10 and 10. To declare an float type array with 50 elements, we write float f and into brackets 5 and 10. Number 3, declare an character type array with 250 elements. We may write it as char n and into brackets 5 into 50. How to initialize a two-dimensional array? We can initialize a two-dimensional array in more than one way. For example, if we have an array with number of rows 2 and number of columns 3, then we enters and we want to enter data in this array, we either write it as int a double r 2, 2 and 3 is equal to 2, 4, minus 5, 9, 0 and 9. So this array has 2 rows and 3 columns. So at index 00 value 2 is stored, at index 01 value 4 is stored, at index 02 value minus 5 is stored, at index 10 in value 9 is stored, at index 1 value 0 is stored, at and index 1 2 and value 9 is stored. Here is another better way to initialize this array with the same array elements. That is, instead of writing all elements in a row, we write it as we write elements in a matrix. For example, for the first row we enter value is 2, 4, 5, and for second row we write values 9, 0, 0. These values are enclosed in parentheses, and other set of parentheses also enclosed these two parentheses. For example, in test 2 and 2, here we have two-dimensional array named test. with 2 rows and 2 columns, and another initialization of this test is test 1010, and all elements are initialized with 0. And here is another that we write 1010 here, 1 and 2 only enter 2 elements in this array. So the first one, int test 22, it is uninitialization, mean we just create an array. We did not give it, or we did not store any value in this array. We just initialize it. So it is called uninitialization. Second one, all elements in an array becomes to 0. We store zeros at each value of this array. And in the second one, we store only 2 values in the array, that 1 and 2. 1 is stored at position 0 0, and 2 is stored at position 0 1, and the remaining elements of this array becomes 0. So here is a small quiz that which are valid initialization of 2D arrays and which are not. First one is int a, and we did not give the size of rows, and we give the size of column, that is 2, and we enter the values 3, 4, and then another set of parentheses, that is 7, then another set of curly braces, that is 2 and 3. At this second, we initialize and another 2D array A with number of, we did not give any number of rows, but it gives the number of columns is equal to 4. The third point, int a 3 and empty brackets, and we store values 4 7 4 3 2 and 1 3, and at the fourth point we have initialize an array int a with empty braces, and we store data 4 7 3 2 1 3, and the last one is int a, and in this array we store data 1 2 3 4. So the question is, which are valid initialization of 2D arrays and which are not? Here is the answer for the first one. This is a valid declaration, and for the second one, this is an invalid declaration, and for the third one, this is invalid declaration, and for the fourth one, this is invalid declaration, and for the last one, this is a valid declaration, because in the first and the second, where we did in the first we did not give the number of rows, and in the last we did not give the number of columns, but we gives the we store values, and compiler automatically calculates the number of rows and number of columns in these two initializations. Referring to array elements means to access the elements of a two-dimensional array, we need a pair of indices, one for row and one for column position. The format is given as name, which is the name of the array, then in the brackets row index, and the second set of brackets column index. For example, if we write cout a and into brackets 1 and 2, then it gives us the elements stored at second row and second row and third column. For example, if we want to store a value at this point, we write a I and 2 is equal to 13. Now 13 is stored at the second row and third column of array A. So here is a problem statement that write a C++ program to display all elements of an initialized two-dimensional array. Here is the solution, that In the main program, we initialize our array with name test. This test has number of 3 rows and number of columns 2, and we initialize it with values 2, -5, 4 and 0, 9 and 1. And when we want to display these values on the screen, we use nested loops. One loop for rows and second loop for columns. We write for int I is equal to 0, I less than 3 as our number of rows are 3. So, and the for second nested loop we use int j is equal to 0, j less than 2 as our number of columns are 2. So we use the condition j less than 2. Then we uh, use cout object to display the value stored in this array test. We write test I and j, and this will display the elements stored in each index of the array. Here is the outer loop used for rows, and the second loop is used for. The output of this program is as test 00 is equal to 2, test 01 is equal to -5, test 10 is equal to 4, test 11 is equal to 0, test 20 is equal to 9, test 21 is equal to 1. Let's have another program create a matrix two-dimensional array mean of 2 rows and 3 columns, fill it with values from the user and to display them in 2 rows and 3 columns. For this problem statement, we want to look like our output as we create a table of 2 rows and 3 columns, and we enter values. We want to enter values 638 in the first row and 947 in the second row. So we use two loops after first outer loop and after second outer loop. Our output should be as 638 and 947. So here is the problem solution. In the main program, first of all, we create an array of 2 rows and 3 columns. We gave it a name mat means matrix, which have 3 rows and 3 columns. Then we use declare 2 variables I and j. We use these 2 variables in the nested loops. Then we use for loops, 2 nested for loops to enter values in this matrix or in this array mat. For first for loop we write I is equal to 0, I less than 2, I plus plus, and for the second loop, that is inner loop, indicates over each column we write j is equal to 0, j less than 3, j plus plus. Then we write cout mat, and it means we give the position at which we want to enter the value, and we enter the value by using scene object, that is scene mat I and j. Similarly, after entering the values, we want to display the values stored in this array name matrix or mat. Again, we need 2 nested loops, that is for I is equal to 0, I less than 2, I plus plus, and for j is equal to 0, j less than 3, j plus plus. First one means outer loop for number of rows, and second one mean inner loop is for number of column. Then we use cout object to display the values stored in this table or in this matrix mat. After compiling the previous code, we get the following output, that enter the matrix elements row wise at position 0 0 we enter 6, at position 0 1 we enter 3, at position 0 2 we enter 8, at position 1 0 we enter 9, at position 1 1 we enter 4, at position 1 2 we enter 7. Then it displays these entered values uh, in the form of a table or a matrix, that is 638 and 947. So here is another problem statement that create a matrix two-dimensional array of user desired rows and columns asked to user. Means number of rows and number of columns is depend on the user desire. Then fill it with values from the user as matrix form and to display them and in 2 rows and 3 columns. It has the same solution as our previous. That is, in the main program, first of all we create array with name ARR, and initially we give this a value 10 10, then number of rows to take the 10 10 is the maximum size of this array. Then we use two variables row and column to ask user to enter the number of rows and columns. Then enter to enter the values in this matrix, we declare another two variables I and j. We use these variables in nested loops. So for I is equal to 0, I less than row, I plus plus, the outer loop create for to access the number of rows, and for j is equal to 0, j less than column, j plus plus mean inner loop is used to access the number of columns. Then we use scene object to enter the values in this array, that is AR, I and J. Then we display the value stored in this array. We write the same nested loops. This time instead of scene object we use cout object. Of this program is enter size of row and column. For example, we enter the size of this table is 2 and 2, number of rows 2, number of columns 2. Then we enter the elements of the matrix row wise 1 2 and 3 3, and then we display matrix that is 1 2 and 3 3.